What's up, everybody? It's Chad. We're back again with another Fyah episode for you of Ask Chad Grassy Logic.
Quite literally.
We're literally, right.
Wow.
That's today's episode, firefighter. Because today I have Paul Walton with me, who is a firefighter. So thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Of course, man. I met him probably a couple months ago through a friend of ours. And, really great story. And, some of the story that he's a part of, I've talked about on the show before. So we'll be able to get through all that, and you guys will know what we're talking about here in the episode in a little bit. But before I do all that, please, give us a really good introduction of yourself, who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
Wow, that's a lot. Firefighter for Bernalillo County, 17 and a half years going on here. We recently, back in February, myself and another group, including our local union, was able to get medical cannabis, or actually cannabis off duty for Bernalillo County firefighters. And we're the first ones and the only ones currently in New Mexico that are allowed to do that. And honestly, we've seen a huge success. And so awesome. We are really, we started a new group here recently called Firefighters for Plant Medicine. And so we're trying to work on getting other departments educated, and admins, government officials, all these different things, educated on the benefits of cannabis for their workers, whoever they may be, off duty, especially first responders. And because it's helped us out so much. And then we're also working on trying to advocate for the psilocybin bill and getting some language in there for first responders, at least recognition. And hopefully get in some stuff, in New Mexico, we're developing this. So hopefully we can get it affordable and accessible for everybody, not just first responders, but yeah. So
100%, because that's been my concern this whole time, during the legislature, during town halls, whatever is, when we do this, medical psilocybin thing, we have to make sure that we're not making the same mistakes we made with cannabis, because yes, we were one of the most strictest medical cannabis programs of the nation. But at the time when we created that program, there was a real fear from the federal government of coming in and shutting us down. So the reason why it was written that way was due to a lot of fear on top of a lot of stigmatization. But for some reason, psilocybin does not have the same stigma as cannabis. Like, it's wild.
Why are they not going to come on you for tripping balls? I mean,
I don't know. One makes you see Jesus and Muhammad at the same time.
What?
You're sitting there in the jungle pretty much in one, or seeing trippy colors or shapes, but cannabis, you're having a good time. Some people do get a little too high, but it's nothing like when you with psilocybin.
Yeah, I mean, look at what's going on right now. Like, how long has it been? And we've been trying to get a reschedule or deschedule right for cannabis, and then all of a sudden psilocybin comes right in and like, oh hey, get out of the way, I'm coming in, we're going to reschedule.
Yeah. And like, it's not only making waves on a state level, on the federal level, it's going faster on the federal level than the state level.
Really?
Yeah, it is. There's a lot more progress on the federal level than most states, because we're only at 3 states right now that have a medical program. The rest are still kind of working on it, kind of like in the medical days. And that's kind of the same playbook that psilocybin's on, but like on times 100 speed is what it feels like. Yeah. So it's like everything's kind of sped up on it.
Well, they're doing more research on psilocybin right now too.
Yeah, and I think cannabis did kind of pave the way. Yeah. It showed them, okay, we can start looking towards more, these plant medicines and medications versus trying to put it in pill form, because we tend to, fuck things up when we do that. So there's a way where I feel both can exist in the world. You know what I mean? Like, you can have your plant medicines and they'll be good for whatever. Then you have your pharmaceuticals that'll be good for whatever else. You know what I mean? And, as time goes, we can kind of figure out where things can kind of merge, and we can go more natural with this one actually, or, we need to go more with this one on the other way.
Well, our guest that we had, previously with the trying to get into pill form, cannabis, and so you're getting more on the medicinal side in that aspect.
Yeah, that was an interesting show.
That was interesting.
Yeah, that one was good. But we're getting off topic here, so let's get back onto the the cannabis and the firefighter stuff first before we go on to more of the psilocybin thing, because I really want to talk about that, because that was historical, not just on a state level but on a national level, because not many places are doing that. They'll either legalize it and leave it to, whatever. If you're in that position, sucks to be you. You should have known you're a cop or whatever that is.
Yeah,
right. We were having an interesting conversation before the show. When we were talking about the medical cannabis laws here in New Mexico, and there are like work protections, but they're very weak, and we do need to work on those. And one of the things that we're talking about is for first responders and stuff, especially police officers, because the argument was like, well, they have to carry a gun. And you had actually an interesting take on that. If you don't care to, if you care to share.
Yeah. Actually, you can look it up. So in New Jersey, and I don't know what specifically how the language is different or anything like that. But there's been at least, I think, 2 or 3 that I know of for sure that police officers in New Jersey that were reinstated after they tested positive for THC. The judge in those cases ruled that they weren't impaired at work. They weren't using at work. And their weapons were not bought by them. They were issued to them. So that language is actually stems into buying a weapon, not so much owning or being issued a weapon, right?
Yeah.
And to further on that, right, what we've seen in the county as far as our firefighters from February, we've seen just huge improvements in mental health, better coping mechanisms with anxiety, better family time. These are all the things that I'm hearing from people. Better sleeping is a big one. Less anxiety, I said. And then another big one is less drinking. So that's a big one. We've had guys stop drinking, a lot of guys less drinking. We've had some vets that stopped drinking. And I mean, we have 2 vets that between the 2 of them have lost like 90 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And one of them completely stopped drinking, and he was using it for coping. And a lot of people do, and police, firefighters, different things like that. And it's almost encouraged, right? Same thing with vets. It's almost encouraged to drink, and even as a society. So that stigma just kind of hangs in there. And why we're against a plant medicine that can actually help you when, I've been 17 and a half years and I've talked to other guys that have been longer or whatever. But as far as running calls on people who have had cannabis, I've a handful, and it's usually some kid that's got into their parents' stash and got a little too high and anxious, right? And kind of like, oh shit, what do I do? Where alcohol is an issue every single day, domestic abuse, crimes, drinking and driving, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that stigma that we have to really educate people and get away from that.
And it's a slow thing, and it's weird, down here, we're close to El Paso. So I follow a page called El Paso Fit Fam. And, like these days, pages like that, more about the area than from the news. It's like a news source. And every weekend they post the people who get DWIs in El Paso, and just about every weekend. And sometimes, damn it, during the week, there's people that die during these crashes, and actually one of the Dixie Chicks or something like that was killed in El Paso from a drunk driver. Was it last year or the year before?
Last year.
Yeah. One of the country singers from
one of the original.
One of the original members. Yeah. She was here. Actually, she was here to look at a pair of Luke Casey boots that she was buying. And upon leaving, she got struck by a drunk driver and passed away. And so it's taken out everybody from, famous people all the way down to, just the poorest of the poor in the area. And it's all due to alcohol drinking. And, that's the unfortunate part. And, it's sad that you have these people that have to respond to these incidents too. And then they get a drinking problem from it because that's the only thing they can do to cope, and like, it's like this just domino effect, and it keeps going and going. It's like giving a disease to someone almost,
Oh yeah. I can absolutely speak on that. As I was telling him earlier, while we were waiting for you, my dad was a cop. He was SO in McKinley County, and he was like a lot of people, a lot of cops out there. He was an alcoholic. He did a lot to cope by drinking, and with all, when you talk about the PTSD that a lot of our veterans come back with, our officers, our firefighters, they see a lot of things on a regular basis, and they have to deal with all that stuff too. So the fact that you can get it from a medicine rather than a bottle, that's just a plus.
Yeah, 100%. You know, and you guys already seen the benefits for it. And if you all watching aren't sure or weren't paying attention in the beginning, Bernalillo did make it to where, you know, like county employees can use cannabis while off of, you know, their shift and everything. And this extends to firefighters, you know, et cetera, like that. But it doesn't extend to the police yet, right? And that's the issue that we're talking
It does
about.
not, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's still that thing about carrying a weapon, and if anybody is regulated by DOT, so if you have like a CDL or something like that, they require testing themselves. Firefighters are actually exempt from DOT, and that was a bit pushback and misinformation when we first started doing all this as well. So there was the DOT thing, there was the Drug Free Workplace Act. So there was misinformation about that. If that you had allowed cannabis for off-duty use, somehow you would lose federal funding because of that. And that bill does not require any drug testing at all, actually. You just have to have some kind of program in place to discourage people from coming in impaired, and then have information if people need help for some kind of addiction and stuff like that. So there's a few rules in there, but there is no rule for testing, to be honest with you. So we found out a lot of some of this information. We started finding out from places like Pittsburgh that had already done this. I think they're about 4 years into allowing cannabis themselves. And so there's been a few other big departments that have done this. New York City has actually done it a couple years ago. Phoenix, the whole city of Phoenix actually changed their drug policy. Let's see, Washington State, California, Virginia, and I think like Maine or Maryland actually put some language into their state policy that allows for first responders. So the cool thing was we were working for firefighters to get it for us for off duty for medical issues, PTSD, you know, anxiety, sleeping, all those kinds of things. But the cool thing that happened from that is that the county changed their entire drug policy. So they 3-tiered it basically. We're in tier 2. Yeah. So we still get randomly drug tested. However, cannabis is not in that test. So the only way that we get cannabis tested is if somebody is a reasonable suspicion of impairment, and then they'll be tested. And we actually were able to get blood testing in addition to a mouth swab, which is honestly the least reliable of testings. So we had blood testing in there, and we're able to get that in there to actually having a reliable test. So coming back full circle to the whole state policy, right? It should be about workers' protections of impairment, right? Not what you did 2 days, 3 days, a month ago. It should be about if you came to work impaired, right? Just like anything else.
Yeah, 100%. You know, because I think that's where people have the misconception, including myself, before we had this conversation. You know, is that it's any drug, anytime whatsoever, they have control of you in that sense, which shouldn't be the case. You know, when I go home, it's on my time. You know, I am away from my place of employment, and that isn't my whole life. You know what I mean? And it should be my choice on how I medicate and how I feel better, because the jobs that you all do, it's hell. Not only just on your bodies from the physical training and the physical, all the stuff that you do physically with the job, but the things that you see and experience. You know what I mean? Like those are very traumatic, and having something that can help you with pain and something with mental, that's huge. Versus alcohol, that all it does is just numb it, and it makes you think these other things, or like, oh, I feel better when I'm drunk. It's like, no, I'm just numb, and then you feel like shit the next day.
It blows my mind that, since I've been learning a lot in the past few years with Chad, that the stigmatism that comes along with cannabis is there, but alcohol, prescription drugs, SSRIs, all of those other stuff like that help for depression and all that other stuff that they will medicate you for. It's like, there's no questions. Just go ahead and do that. You can do that while you're on duty. That'll be fine.
No. Yeah. You can get legal cocaine.
Yeah, pretty much. Remember, you can legally get prescribed fentanyl.
Yeah, you can. You can get fentanyl from the a drive-through prescription window. So
it's really sad. And when coming back to the safety sensitive part of it, the crazy part about that whole thing is that every safety sensitive definition language is all referred to being impaired at work. not what you do away from work on your own time when you're not being paid, right? So that's, I just hate that safety sensitive thing, because it's like, well, you're safety sensitive, so that means that when you're away from here, you also have to be safety sensitive. It's like, no, I'm a dad. You know, I'm a weekend warrior, mountain biking, playing pickleball, whatever. But that's my own free time. I'm not even getting paid from you. You shouldn't control my entire life, you know, just because I do this particular job. But in that particular job, the hard thing is that a lot of first responders are the type of people that we carry everything without trying to show everything, right? Even in the worst situations, we're professional. We do what we, no matter what's going on in our head. And then afterwards, we have to deal with that. We don't know how to cope with it. We just push it down inside until finally, after several years of doing it, something happens and it explodes, and you end up having some kind of traumatic event or mental breakdown or something like that. And it happens. So coping with that stuff as we go, being preventative and not, you know, reactionary, right? It's just not like how government works and a lot of places work, where, you know, we're more, we like to react more than anything else.
Yeah, you know, and thank you for that. You know, by the way, with the reaction versus prevention, I've spoken about that many times on the show. You know, like, you know, I try to tell people, you know, there's certain things in our government that are just very reactive, like the police force. That's a reactive force. You know, that's not a preventive force. The preventive force is us, the community. We prevent people from doing certain things by being the community, talking to people, being there, whatever. You know, like an example is your friends drinking too much at the bar. You haven't drank anything, give them a ride home. You know, don't let them drive drunk. You know, be the DD, you know, like, look, we'll leave your car here, you know, like, and we'll come and get it in the morning, you know, or whatever, you know, that's just one little example, you know, or, you know, your nephew's being, you know, a little crap and he's, you know, skipping school, you know, scold him for it, you know, let the parents know, and, you know, kind of work with the kid a little bit, maybe like keep him out of trouble, you know, from doing something, or being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Because, you know, here in Las Cruces, unfortunately, we had that mass shooting here, you know, a while back that stemmed from, you know, a disagreement, and innocent people got shot, and some were there just wrong place, wrong time. And, you know, things like that prevent it. And, you know, to be honest, it probably prevents people from taking guns to something like that anyway in the first place. You know, because, you know, that was a little ridiculous. But, you know, I digress. So, you know, like we do want to, you know, reduce harm as much as possible and just be the, you know, preventive force. And this is the best way to do it. You know, like, how do you prevent your, you know, fellow firefighters from, you know, drinking too much alcohol? Allow them to use cannabis off the clock. You know, like it's a pretty simple thing, you know, and, you know, ensure that they're being smart users just like anyone else, of course. You know, not taking it to work or you're using it at work.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting. I mean, people talk about this, and I heard a lot of feedback and a lot of positive from people, but then obviously negative from people worrying about that whole thing about coming to, it's like, well, you don't come to work drunk, do you? Like, it's the same sort of thing, right? And in fact, if you use cannabis the night before to go to sleep, you're not going to wake up with a big old hangover and come to work with a hangover, which really is kind of impairment, right?
Wake up in a better mood.
Mentally, everything. And I'm from a really strong believer that allowing off-duty cannabis, and whether it be medically, recreationally, whatever, but having education so people use it correctly, right? And we can abuse anything, sugar, alcohol, coffee, everything, right? But letting them like get some education, use it properly as a medication with that intent. And then also with the psilocybin thing coming up too, I mean, throw that in there as well. But if you have better mentally prepared first responders, you have better home life and you have a better community, right? Just like we talked about. And again, going full circle back to that community thing, you're absolutely 100% right. We have fallen into this trap where a lot of people send their kids to school and they think that the school is supposed to teach them like sort of basic morals and ethics and all that kind of stuff, right? No, that's supposed to come from you at home, not leaving it up to them to do that sort of stuff, right? And it's full circle everywhere. Right. We're trying to have other people teach us this stuff. It's like, no, you should be teaching this at home, not having them and making them do that. Right.
And when you do that, you allow the kids to learn it from their friends, and the friends don't even know. So like, it's just, you're guessing, you know.
I don't trust my friends to teach me nothing.
Yeah. Right.
Except for you, Chad.
Well, I appreciate you trusting me. You know,
Well, you're teaching me about some of the wrong things, apparently. So, you know,
oh yeah, I teach you about drugs.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, you know, and that's a great point. You know, like we have to teach our kids. My parents were both teachers for 20 something years. My dad was in the Air Force, but then he became a teacher afterwards, and then my mom became a teacher as well. And so I would hear it all the times. I'll be sitting there doing my homework with my sisters, and they get a phone call, and the parents like, oh, this and that's going on. What's going on? My dad's like, well, this and this. They're like, well, what are you gonna do? And my dad's like, what do you mean? What am I gonna do? What are you gonna do? You're the parent. You're the adult here. You're the one in charge. Like you're the teacher. He's like, I teach him history. I don't teach him how to be an adult.
Right.
He's like, there's a big difference here. Like that is your child. And I'm telling you what the issue is, and it's your responsibility to fix it. How you do it, I have no clue. My kids are right here doing homework. And
Yeah.
so I was like, so, that's one thing that I really hope that changes in the future with, our community is a little bit more community, like, a little less of this, separation thing, like there was, a little more accountability when, we had community more involved with each other. And I don't mean just like your neighbor, your family,
Right.
like your family is community, your cannabis industry people is community, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know you're looking at me because I have that look on my face right now.
Yeah, I was like, Gina wants to say something.
I don't want to derail anything or just get it off topic. I don't want to go down any rabbit trails. But I remember being in a grocery store once, and parent and kid, kid's probably 5-6 years old, not behaving, not listening or anything else like that. I see the parent just, you go like, oh, he's gonna get in trouble, right thing, like we used to. No, parent pulled the kid in and says, hey, you better start being nice, or you better stop misbehaving, or else I'm going to tell your teacher. And I'm going like, wait a minute. When did telling your teacher that you did bad things is more of a threat than, wait till your dad gets home?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I can see a threat is if your teacher is really hot, I guess. But like, that's about it.
That only happened once. Anyway.
No, but I get you on that, man. What's up?
Making excuses to talk to the teacher. Huh?
It's like, I know he's attracted to his teacher, so I'm gonna tell him. That's the only thing I can think of. But yeah, other than that, it's like, come on, man. Like you're the adult here. You're the parent.
Yeah,
like,
and that was probably 15 years ago when that happened. So that tells you how long it's been going on. But like I said, I don't want to derail that because we could do a whole other show on all of that stuff.
Yeah, that could be a whole episode on its own. So. But we'll digress and we'll get back to the topic at hand again and everything. But we're having some really good conversations today. How could we not talk about it? But like I really appreciate you, like talking about this topic in the first place, because it's not talked about enough. Because people kind of disregard it when it comes to like, oh, whatever, those guys don't need it. It's like, what do you mean they don't need it? They think you guys are just chopping wood in the forest or something. I'm like, no, those guys are doing some crazy shit. They see some of the worst things that, you could possibly see. Like if you think what you've been seeing on the internet the past few weeks, because some of it's been gruesome, is bad. They see that almost on a daily basis because some of the bad stuff that happens in communities just isn't talked about sometimes. Like, I've learned that talking to, people at first responders. I'm like, dude, I didn't even know that happened here the other day. What do you mean? Like, oh yeah, this and this and this. And I'm like, oh my God.
You hear about things every once in a while since, I do news for the radio station. So I hear about things probably or pay attention to a little bit more than anybody else. And especially recently now that our county has our firefighters are now doing the EMS stuff. They're going to be the first responders, so that we don't have ambulance service. It'll be the firefighters that are doing all of that. But you hear about things that go on, and I mean, we had the incident with Officer Hernandez a couple of last year. But when I don't want to bring anybody down, but when you hear stuff about kids or anything else like that, I had a friend of mine who was, I had a friend of mine who was EMS, and they were a kid went in a pool and they were trying to revive him and they couldn't. I mean, stuff like that. Yeah. Like I said, you talk about PTSD from veterans, what officers, firefighters, first responders, sometimes they see all those things and nobody really talks about any of it.
And some of these guys are veterans as well. So they did their time. They went to Iraq already and they came back and they're still serving the community and enduring this. And my hat's off to those guys because, they just continued, and I would say in a very more humble light because, you've told me this before and I've heard this many times, no one made a song that says, fuck the fire department before, You know, like you haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah, we definitely do have it a little bit better than law enforcement, because they're looked at a little bit differently when they show up on scene compared to us, right? So we're there to help, you know, but and that's the problem too, is that you know, just we're professional at what we do, but we keep that stuff down inside. And you could ask a firefighter, first responder for that matter, on any given day how they are, and they're going to tell you they're fine, when deep down inside they could probably be one of the worst days of their life right now, but they're not going to show it. They're not going to tell you about it. So it's definitely a barrier. There's barriers there. And it's a stigma too, not just for ourselves, but everyone around us, and then the community itself, that like, we're not supposed to show emotions, right? We're not human, right? You got into this job, you know what you're getting into, but it's like, man, that's screwed up not to have some support and some kind of way of coping and dealing with all these traumas. And then no one really talks about the sleep deprivation either. When guys are sleeping at the stations, but getting multiple calls during the night, you never sleep good no matter what, because your body's on alertness, right? Constant awareness that you might get a call or something like that. But there's been so many studies that show how bad the schedule can be with the sleeping. It increases PTSD symptoms. It increases like a lot of body hormonal and nervous system issues. You know, so there's a lot of other issues that get involved with that. So these guys are walking around looking like they're fine. And some cope with things better than others. We know this, we're all human, we're all different, but there's a lot of guys walking around with a lot of trauma, and they don't know what to do with it. And it messes with their lives, and it messes with their family's lives too, their home life. So we've seen all these improvements so far in the county with guys using off duty. So it's huge. It really is huge. And so we need to help these first responders, and we want to try and bring awareness to the regular our public and general public about these guys, because they're not talked about. Like, I'm assuming that you are a vet, Chad, is that correct?
Yeah, I was in the Army.
So, and I've talked to a lot of other vets here recently with the psilocybin stuff, Chris and Victoria and some other, and there's a lot of, you see it too in the news everywhere. A lot, the VA's looking at doing psilocybin and allowing cannabis recommendations, right? That they don't do now. You know, so we're seeing that a lot of vets, there is a lot of recognition for vets, but there's not much awareness for the first responders in your community that do a whole career doing this sort of stuff, you know? So, But, and my wife works at the VA, and she sees a lot of it too, where guys are vets, they come in with different ailments and they're on hospice care, or they're, you know, different things like that. And they're not allowed to use their cannabis, anything. Right. And it's something that they've been using, but they'll gladly give them, you know, like these pharmaceutical drugs, right? That may help in some ways, but there's a lot of side effects to most of them too.
Yeah. Or it may help temporarily, and then until the depression hits, and, you know, you just, you know, kind of go through it, or you have to take more or whatever. That's the unfortunate part. And, you know, these are great things. And to be honest, I've been seeing it change more lately. On 9/11, they had a first responder like appreciation at a lot of dispensaries that I saw, and military. It was like a both kind of thing. So a lot of them are really like, you know, hooking people up, you know, 30-40% off if you're, you know, first responder or veteran. And I was like, that's great. You know, I love that. You know, or prior even, you know. I think that's important too, because those traumas don't just go away when you stop doing the job. You know, we've seen that time and time again. So, you know, like at any point you should be able to, you know, use for that. So, you know, I'm glad that people like you are out there fighting and everything. You know, when did you decide to start becoming a cannabis advocate?
That's a good question. So I had a history before I got into the department with it. And I actually had a history with psychedelics as well. I had life-changing experience before I got into the fire department. But what happened was, like, I stopped using anything, right? Well before I got in. And then over the course of these 17 plus years, little things started happening, and you don't really notice them on that small scale, right? Until they start getting bigger and winding up. And by the time they're kind of wound up pretty good, you're already in the thick of it, and you don't really realize a lot of times how your reactions are, and you know, to different things that shouldn't be reacting in those ways, right? And you get a lot of chaos in your head. And so what happened it's coming up on about 3 years now. I had hernia surgery from injury at work, and I was probably at my lowest point at that point. Like I was bad. And so I got a medical card before my surgery. I knew I was going to be off for a few weeks, and I started taking the opiates when I got home. I had 5 hernias repaired at one time. So it was pretty painful. Shit. Yeah, it was bad. That's a whole nother story of why it took so long. But anyways, workers' comp is not the best. Not really there to help very much. It's just another insurance, to be honest. Yeah. But so I took the opiates that they gave me first 3 days, and I've never been very good at pharmaceutical medications. A lot of times I'll have reactions to different things, and I just felt like crap. So we tried some cannabis, and I hadn't used in 15 plus years, and it was crazy. So it helped me with my pain, but it helped me come back to who I was before I got in the department as well. And so it started me on that mental health journey. And I remember the first post-op surgery, I went back to the doctor, get everything's checked, right? Asked me what I'm doing for pain management. And I said, well, I took the opiates, but I didn't like it. So I started using the cannabis instead. And they were like, I'm more than 100% supportive of that pain management style. Yeah. And it worked great. I started doing paintings. It was crazy. It brought me out of the shell I had been in, and all this trauma started coming out and getting released that following year. So segueing back into, then what happened was started talking to I knew that the local union, our union, had been looking at setting up a cannabis committee to possibly looking at some stuff. They hadn't quite done it yet. But I got a hold of my friend who was the Democratic chair for New Mexico. She hooked me up with Liz Thompson, who's the health and the HHS chair, and told her kind of what we were looking at doing, or kind of the language in the Linen-Aaron Act about the safety sensitive to get changed. And she was 100% on board. So we formed this committee real quick, got our president, Teddy Igbuhai, and Miguel Tittman, our chapter president, on this committee. We started looking at language. We got some language. We presented it at the long session, not this past one, but the one a couple years before. And it got a little bit of legs on it, but it didn't go very far. So this last one, it seemed like it went a little bit further this time. And the language changed a little bit to refer to about impairment instead. And then it got stalled again. So hopefully we can get something better and something passed this next time. But that's what got me started on that cannabis, was helping me, to be honest. And I saw how well it worked. And then I started looking at other departments that were doing it. We're not the first ones. So we can do this, right? Yeah. We're in a pretty good state to do this. It wasn't easy. But it took about 2.5 years, and we finally got it done. And all the commissioners voted unanimously 3 times to pass it. So it worked out great. But during that journey, I had I went up to Colorado, about 2.5 years ago, and had an experience up there, and it'd been a long time. So I was actually pretty nervous about it, but it really fell back into familiar territory right away from that. And then I came back and did it again a year after that. So I've done a couple. And as we know, everybody's talking about this analogy of psilocybin and the mental health of basically being 20 years of talk therapy in one session. And it's true. It really is. Whether it's a hard one or not, right? If it's a hard one, it was probably meant to be a hard one, to get that crap out of you so that you do feel better and more open. Yeah. So that's what kind of started that whole process.
Nice. And maybe this will motivate someone else in a similar position of you to, kind of, join in a similar journey. Because I've noticed that, with my advocacy through years, that it's caused, other veterans to join, or other people to I need to join in this too. Because, one person can change some things, but if there's a bunch of us together, we can change it faster and better, because like I'm just one person,
Maybe a bunch of people like sometime in January at some circular house that's happening up in Santa Fe. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Some roundhouse. That's what it is. That's what it's called. Yeah. Legislature.
That's right. New Mexico State Legislature.
That's it. It happens every year.
So it's a tough one when there's a short session though, and it's budget orientated, right? So that's a tougher prospect to get something like that passed. But I would like to see another idea that I had was to see if we can get some kind of equity fund or something like that from the state, and that way veterans and first responders could have access to free medical cards. So basically it would be some kind of program that doctors that are able to prescribe cards would basically see a patient, and then they would send in the receipt or whatever for that to the state and then get reimbursed. And they would obviously have to have some kind of fixed amount or something like that. But I think that would be also very helpful, especially, I mean, this, since recreational has come about, medical cards have dropped a lot, right? Yes. Because they don't have to renew that. We encourage our guys to do that. It legitimizes things really well. It's better with education. And it's also an extra layer of protection if something were to happen down the road, right?
Definitely. And I still tell people that to this day that, you should look into getting your medical cannabis card on the cannabis side, because one, you don't pay taxes. Two, you do have more protections. I get that the work protections are pretty weak, but there are other really, good protections, even protections from CYFD. If you're a parent, there's more protections for you in that sense. And it's going to be still true when it comes to the psilocybin. And I'm glad that you're promoting that to people and telling them, look, it's good to get it for this and this, but also you are protected more legally for using this medicine and for getting treatment. Just like your prescription that protects you from whatever schedule that drug is that you're using. This is going to be essentially the same thing, just a little different. So I hope to see more. Go ahead.
Sorry, to add on that too is that what we found was that a couple of New Mexico court cases that have happened. One was with Sacred Gardens and the Tax and Revenue Department for reimbursement, and then the other one was a workers' comp case. And in both of those cases, the judges ruled that medical card, the Department of Health medical card, cannabis card, meets or is a functional equivalent of a prescription because it meets the state statute of the definition of what a prescription is. And so there's that sort of protection there too. It's like, well, this is recognized. So actually workers' comp will reimburse you for your medical cannabis for an injury that you got hurt at work. Right. Yes. So putting all these little puzzles together, it's like, okay, people are recognizing this. Your workers' comp will reimburse for it. It's not the stigma like devil's, lettuce sort of thing that you were taught, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Let's move past that. We're educated people,
Exactly. Let's stop with this. We won't know if you're high. Okay, guy, let's get over that. Come on, let's be adults about it. So, I totally get that. And I hope we do change it. And when time comes, let me know and I'll join the fight on that, because that's something that I wanted to change too. This year for the industry, we're going to be pushing for the tax thing, to have it not increase even more. So I think if we do that, and on the medical side, go for that one too, I think that's going to be a really good fix, because that's something I've really wanted to change for a long time, is get that language for the work protections a lot stronger, because it's so weak that it does nothing. It's just there for, for looks, and to be like, look, we did something. But when it came to practice of it, it wasn't strong enough. So I hope we do. And to be honest, having people like you, fighting and everything, man, I'm glad that you joined us, because, I can only do so much from my side. And when people like you come in and say, hey, firefighters need it, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, come on, guys, join the fight. So we definitely want you guys on our side. So, I appreciate you, bringing your story and everything like that. But before we, jump to the next conversation and everything, you had a website beforehand that I had Gino pull up. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, we just threw this up together. I mean, so I'll be honest with you. This was an idea that we had about 3 months ago, firefighters for plant medicine. And we just started thinking about, okay, so we got it for the county. And I had to take a little bit of a break, to be honest with you, because like 2.5 years of, I can't even tell you how many hours I spent on the phone or researching or writing little papers or putting together little PowerPoints and stuff like that on information. It was consuming. My wife was like, man, I hope this passes so I don't have to deal with this as much anymore, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But we, you know, the union was fantastic in helping us get with a Commissioner Olivas, who really was a strong advocate for us for getting this and really propelled us to happen. But there are limitations to the union, right? And what they can do and different things. They have to, some borders they have to fall in and different things. So we decided like, well, let's form a little group and see if we can just start educating people for mental health. And especially with the psilocybin coming up too, let's advocate for us with the Department of Health. And so that we're recognized in there. And so we can get some kind of help with in that regard as well. So, yeah, so really it's all about just trying to educate and promote mental health. So awareness, advocacy, and education is what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Dope. You know, well, thank you for sharing that and the website. And if those of you watching are curious, go ahead and, you know, check out the website, see what they're about. If you happen to be a part of this, because I know some people that watch my show, they're incognito. They're like, oh, you know, I'm waiting to retire, or I'm waiting for this and that. And so if you happen to be someone, please reach out to Paul, you know, reach out to these people and, you know, maybe join the fight with them, or maybe get some information, or maybe in your area, they can help you change the you know, rules and everything to allow this as well. Because, you know, I hope Doña Ana does that here soon, down here in the South. You know, I think that would be probably the next move. And actually, when that happened, I talked to some city councilors, you know, fairly shortly afterwards, and they loved that idea. They said, they looked at each other and said, that's a good idea. And I was like, hey, let's do it. So who knows?
Chad, man, if you have some people that you're familiar with and we could talk to, I would love to come down and just educate them. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. So we don't want to be advocate like we're pushing it on people, right? And it's not for everyone. Nothing is for everyone, right? And it's not a cure-all drug, just like psychedelics are not a cure-all drug for mental health. There's work involved and there's responsibility involved with it, right? And using it correctly. But it's really just about educating people and getting that old information like updated, like, hey, this is what you've been taught, but that's not true. This is really what is new and what is really the truth about it. And then they can make their own opinions from that. But it's honestly, it's been so beneficial and helpful to a lot of guys. And it's not just us. Talking to guys in New York and Pittsburgh, and Prince Williams, I was talking to them earlier when we were doing all this. They've had the same thing. Better mental health for their guys, less alcohol related issues for their guys. Everyone has said that. So that's I mean, that's a huge positive. And people are like, oh, you're replacing one thing with another, but it's like, yeah, but how many people like go out and do rampage shooting on things, right? Or go out and, you know, do other domestic violence when they've used a little cannabis? It doesn't happen. You know, so
or you know, they get super drunk and do questionable things. Right. Yeah, you get too high and eat some ice cream. You know, it's like I never talked to someone that got too stoned and they woke up with something questionable in their body. You know what I mean? After a long night of smoking weed, it happens. I'm drunk. You know, so yeah, definitely. And then, you know, I thank you so much for, you know, sharing all these stories and the fight and everything. And yeah, I look forward to us working on some other stuff, you know, in the future. Let's maybe I think working on the county commissioners here in Las Cruces or Doña Ana would probably be the best start to get that change going. I think once the county commissioners change that, I think the city will just fall right behind them and change it fairly quickly to match it.
Yeah.
So
that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much for sharing it. And I look forward to keeping this conversation going with you on the next topics and everything. But before we move on, is there anything you want to share before we do?
Not so much, really, to be honest with you. Just kind of, if we're moving on, I don't know if we're talking about psilocybin next or anything like that, or what our next topic is you're thinking about. But we've been really working on the psilocybin thing here lately, and just trying to get making our way to advocacy and awareness in this big group that's happening. We know that it's got a lot of steam behind it now that things have been moving forward. And I was just at the Enchanted State event, a couple weeks ago up in Santa Fe. That was a really inspiring event with so many people talking and about New Mexico and what could happen here. So, so we're really trying to work on that. And one of the things that I'm kind of pushing for, and talking to Dominic Zerlo a little bit and some other people, is looking at the microdosing. So when you look at first responders, I talked about this before, those barriers, like the self-recognition, and stoicness and all those sort of things, not wanting to let go of control, right? Not wanting to open up, not wanting to feel weak and look weak to either your family, your coworkers, the general public. Just because you have emotions doesn't mean that you're weak, right? And so we got to get past that. And I really think that guys that are resistant, a microdosing regimen before a macro would really help in that regard of allowing them to become familiar with the medicine, the plant, and opening up a little bit so that they are accepting of a bigger, more intense and helpful journey.
Yeah, and that's a good way to really put it, because I've seen people just go balls to the wall straight ahead, but I think getting a microdose regimen going would be very important for anyone really, especially with people within the fire department and first responder stuff, especially once we start getting this cannabis stuff going. Getting the medical psilocybin stuff going. Man, I mix those up sometimes when we're talking about both. I've been so used to talking about one for so long. It's I have to get used to talking about both. But that's great that you're talking to Dr. Zerlo too. Great guy. He used to help us a lot in the medical cannabis days, and I'm glad that he's still involved on the psilocybin side too.
Yeah, I've talked to him a few times now. He's actually a really super nice guy. I'm glad that we have someone like that with the Department of Health advocating for the use of plant medicines. And it's interesting because in a conversation I had with him, he has a family history with firefighters. He had relatives and grew up playing around a firehouse when he was younger and stuff like that. So he definitely has a little bit of a connection with firefighters and roots for us. So, but he also has a Department of Health position. So he has to, stay in those guidelines as well, right? Stay in his lane. So,
can't veer too much off.
Yeah. Can't act like he's trying to promote it and help us, right? And that sort of thing, right? So
he has to still do his job at the same time, which is fair. I respect someone who can, keep the two separate. These days that seems like it's kind of rare. People to keep, just things separate from work and the other things too. So I applaud him for it. But thank you for that. Our next topic, actually, the last two topics on my show, is just update people on something that's going on, or another topic might be similar. But we had such a great conversation that, we got like 10 minutes left of the show. So I'm just going to update everybody really quick on this stuff. And, you guys can chime in, whatever you like, whatever you think. But yeah, these two last topics, this one actually just came out yesterday at the time of recording. Of course, my episodes come out on Thursday. We record them on Wednesday. DNA Bernalillo, if that name rings a bell for those of you listening, he was the one who was a part of that illegal Chinese grow operation up north. And he had got popped. They, shut it down and everything. He had over like 1,100 greenhouses out there, or something ridiculous. Yeah, 1,100. Not just like 1,100, 1,100. I think when they took it down, I think he had like 6,000 plants or something crazy, or 60,000. Some I'll look right here. Here we go, right here. 260,000 plants, 260, and 60,000 pounds of processed product is what he had. Yeah.
60,000?
Yeah. 60,000 pounds. And like, that's processed product. Now, I don't know if that's just straight flour or if he was making other stuff too in manufacturing, they added on. So I don't know what that makeup of that lot is, but that's what they said they found. And yeah, that's 1,100. that makes sense when you say 1,100, greenhouses. And my first thought was, as a cannabis grower, I'm like, man, I wonder if they're going to be selling those. And they're probably going to be cheap as shit.
But they're not in BioTrack, right?
Head. Huh?
They're not in BioTrack, right?
No, I mean, the greenhouses don't matter, but the plants, that would have to be. But yeah, so here's his charges, and then I'll read them verbatim, so that way I don't, have to memorize it or get it wrong. He was convicted on 15 total counts, including conspiracy, illegal hiring practices involving migrants, and illegal farm possession tied to drug trafficking. He also was charged with, I think, endangering the environment or something, or ruining waterways, because he redirected some water and it did a bunch of stuff, and and tainted the waterway over there. So he also got charged with that, polluting the river is what he got charged with on top of that. So I mean, he at first was fighting this, and he actually, I believe, sued the state. We're going to sue the state because you shut us down, ha ha ha. But now he actually pled guilty to everything. Wow. And so this was put out yesterday. So he took accountability, said, yes, I did all that. How can you really deny that? I can, and I don't know if you know or not.
It's all for
Paul.
Personal use.
Exactly. and Paul, if you're not sure, and the people watching not sure, what happened was, they had a bunch of illegal immigrants working there, not just from China. Come to find out, there were some workers from the res, from the tribe, and also some from other countries too. So it was like a cluster of just a bunch of people in really bad work environments. And the Chinese people, their passports were taken, their phones were taken, they were put into really bad environments and forced to work. It was really bad, almost like slave labor. So I'm glad he got taken down. It's just unfortunate because it came from tribal land. Yeah. And they pushed so much of water sacred, this and that, and it seemed that he didn't get the message.
You think?
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't get the message. That water is sacred, especially here in New Mexico.
Yeah, very much.
And
so.
He found that out the hard way.
Yeah, and I can guarantee he'll probably get more time for the drug-related charges and the water charges than he will for any of the other trafficking or illegal migrants.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. And that's probably why it took so long, because they were trying to look for a charge that would stick and that would also really stick. Because I think he's facing like 15 to life or something like that. So yeah, a minimum of 15 years in prison and up to life. But also with him, his father, Donald Bernalillo, he's 74. He was charged in this as too, and his business partner, who his name is Ray Yuri. I think he's the one from China. He was charged in this as well. Now, one thing I do want to point out is, from what I'm finding from looking it up, is that they said that Bernalillo had told the Chinese people that this is going to be used for hemp, and that's how he got the investors to give him the money in the first place. Is that he lied to them and told them it was going to be for something totally different. Hemp is a total different ball game. If that's totally federally legal and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But unfortunately, that's not what it was, and so they got duped and also had to carry that charge too. And to be honest, maybe that's what it was at the end of the day. It's like, all right, cool, I messed up, but also I got the rest of these people messed up, and there could be more coming, so I better stop the bleeding where I can. And I think that's what it came down to. Is
take the charges that they've got now and not let them build on it.
Exactly. He said, I'm already facing 15, and these are just stacking up, so we might as well just cut the bleeding. So, I mean, with that being said, I mean, what do you guys think of that?
Oh, that's insane, to be honest with you. But we've been hearing about it. Like, I've been hearing a lot about Oklahoma recently, or the last couple of years, to be honest with. And I think I've heard about some stuff like off of I-40 east of Albuquerque, right? Some questionable grow areas over in that area as well. And it's all it does is hurt the New Mexico, right, growers and shops here. Yeah, I you talked about this before, but unfortunately, I think there could have been a little bit more regulation with how many dispensaries were allowed to be opened and all that kind of stuff. And I had this kind of saying before when we were trying to get our cannabis thing. It's like, well, all these places really love the cannabis money, but they don't want to let us use it. Yeah.
Well, in this case, the issue is production, and that's really what it's boiled down to. Is and other states have found out too, and Michigan, Oregon, Washington, Massachusetts have all said that to be honest, we found that it's the production that is the issue. And to be honest, this was a good example of it, because you have this facility that was producing hundreds of thousands of illegal plants and no dispensary. They were selling it to black market places outside of the state. And that messed with the prices here, and that messed with the industry, and that caused a lot of issues here. And even today with the high plant count, some places have 54,000 plants, that's caused a lot of issues. And I tell people this: you can't sell what's not there. So like there would be less, retail activity and these, random spots, because at the beginning they were selling illegal product because the state refused to open up licenses. So like the opposite of what they thought was going to happen, because I knew that was going to be the case. I was like, it's going to get flooded like crazy because they didn't open up licensing beforehand, because we didn't have enough cannabis for the medical cannabis program before we went adult use. And so I was like, all this is going to do is just flood everything. One or two things is going to happen. And my prediction at the time was we were just going to run out of cannabis. The unknown variable at the time was the fact that I didn't know we were going to get flooded with Oklahoma cannabis and all this other illegal cannabis that was being taken to those shops that were setting up. And that's where we started running into these issues. And so that's really where it started. And then it kind of just started to slow. And then once we got up and going, it kind of just didn't stop. And then finally they kind of cracked down a little bit on it. And then once the people got up and going, they just produced way more than what we had even then. And so it kind of just kept going. And now we have $50, $20 ounces, sometimes $10 eighths. Like it's
I'm going to pretend I know what that means.
Yeah. Gino's looking at me like, he's still learning. Don't worry, everybody.
Well, so, I think I've mentioned before that as far as production goes, I think it's a supply and demand thing.
Yeah.
When you take a basic economics class, that if you have too much supply, I mean, God, the traditional market should have known this forever. If you've got too much, you got to sell it cheap, or you're not going to make any money.
Exactly.
So our producers really should be self-regulating to go ahead and make sure that you keep the prices steady. And
what's unfortunate is some of the businesses intentionally tried to flood the market so that way they can push people out of the industry, because the micro farmer is going to have a harder time selling his stuff at a reasonable price if the retailer is going to expect to get it at a very cheap price. But the quality of what they were getting wasn't great either. That's the saving grace in cannabis, is you can have these cheap ounces and this and that, but the quality isn't going to be there where it's going to be with something else. So I think that's where it kind of saves us, and I'm like, okay, cool. Let's focus on the production, because I like seeing craft. And to be honest, when it comes to like the psilocybin side of things, I hope we don't run into this issue again. You know what I mean? I hope when it comes to that, they take that into consideration to say, okay, we're really going to have to focus on the production side, because that's where things can get out of hand, and that's where things can get manipulated. And then it dominoes to everything else. You know what I mean? Like it just bleeds into everything.
Well, quality is one of those things that you had talked about. Like the good thing the micro growers have is that craft cannabis is apparently it's good shit. I don't know. I mean, apparently it's good stuff. But like I said, or like you said, the idea of having that production set even before you get to the psilocybin stuff, because you're talking quality, and with that stuff, you definitely don't want to mess around with quality or any weird shit going on with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're going to say something, Paul. I'm sorry.
Well, so I do fire code inspections, business inspections here in Bernalillo County. So I have several dispensaries that I have, and then actually in the East Mountains, there's quite a few growers, and they're micro growers, right? And so I've seen the struggles, and I've heard the struggles from them with water issues, right? They're cracking down, especially this year. I guess they're going around a lot more, cracking down on things. But like you said, I have a prediction, and I think that what's going to happen over the course of the next few years is that you're going to see that craft, and it's going to be like craft brews, right? Like breweries, right? You're going to have this like sort of cannabis that is a mass production, like sort of, plant, right? But then you're going to have these specialty sort of plants that people are growing. And so consumers are real consumers, right? They like the craft style over just that mass quantity of stuff.
Yeah, and I tell people, you have your Bud Lights, you have your Miller Lights, you have your Michelob Ultra, whatever. But you also have your Santa Fe Brew. You also have, your Little Toad Creek.
Your 88 Ale.
88 Aggie Ale.
Or one of my favorites, Moose Drool.
Moose Drool. What is that?
Hey.
You know that?
Oh, yeah. My wife's from Montana. Yeah. So
it's a Montana brewing company.
Oh, okay. And that's the thing I want to hear. I want to hear that. I want to tell somebody, hey, did you get that moose fucker yet? Where's that? Some weed from Montana. It's like, oh shit, hell yeah, dude. You know, some micro stuff right there.
Yeah. and you know, once all the federal stuff gets laid out, like I said, craft cannabis, you know, you can start some of that stuff.
Exactly. And you know, that's going to change things a lot too. And I've told people this. I said, to be honest, you guys, I'm not saying people are fools for betting on it, but if you think the dispensary model is going to be cannabis is going to be in the future, it's like you're dead wrong and you're kind of foolish, because you know hemp has shown us otherwise. Because hemp is everywhere. You can get Walmart, Walgreens, gas stations. You know, it's everywhere. That's going to be cannabis one day, just how alcohol and tobacco is. Now, the dispensary is going to be very niche. That's going to be where you get your very, very rare craft stuff. There's not going to be a lot of them. Not a lot of dispensaries in that time. And we're going to have probably, how many liquor stores do we have in town? 2? We used to have like 3 or 4.
We used to have like a dozen.
Yeah, we used to have a bunch.
But, have a bunch. Yeah. But I just know of one major one, another one, because I haven't been out in a while, you know, to go buy anything. But
I drive by.
Right. If I and there are places that I go to get, or used to go to get the moose drool, because there are not too many people that will sell Montana Brewing Company. So and that would be like some of these specialty stores, like that would carry the wine and beer and stuff like that. But yeah, if I'm looking for something specific like that craft, then I'm going to go to the liquor store that'll have that. And if I wanted a Coors Light, I'd go to Walmart. You know?
Yeah, I mean, why would I go to a liquor store to pick up Coors Light? That makes no sense. You can just go to Walmart. Yeah.
Well, that's like you talked about with, if it does, you know, deschedule at some point, right? And federally, like you said, it's going to be that mass produced like packs of, you know, almost like cigarettes, right? You know, and you're going to buy it at tobacco places or whatever. But then like the dispensary, again, it's going to be like the craft breweries, right? It's going to have that sort of stuff. And then that's where you're going to get educated as well. I think that's a big thing that's missed in a lot of people, is just, man, go get educated, right? And don't just start off slow and work your way into what feels good for you, because everybody's different. You know, so
I'd like to think that the idea of advocacy and educator should go hand in hand.
They do, you know, and I think some people don't realize that, you know, and I'm not shy to say it. It's like, I'm an advocate, but I'm also an educator. You know, I was raised by educators too, so it makes it look easier.
Totally. Second generation.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I skipped a little bit. You know, I'm doing it a different way. You know, I'm educating adults, I guess, is what I'm doing. But yeah, you know, you have to be able to educate, and that is one huge piece that is missing. And I push this, and to be honest, it has changed, especially down here in the South. Up north, you know, totally different game. But even down in Sunland Park, those bud tenders out there are just doing an amazing job educating, you know, the Texans out there. And that's great, because those Texans need to be educated. You know, they come from a state where it's not legal. And so they need to be on that. And to be honest, one day we're going to be there with psilocybin too. You know, we're going to have to educate the Texans. You know, we're going to have to educate the older people, et cetera, et cetera. So it's good practice for now for us to do that and to educate everybody. Because we will get there one day. It could be 30, 40 years from now, but we'll get there. You know, just like with federal legalization and Texas finally, you know, legalizing it too. It could be 3 years from now. It could be 40 years from now. One day it will happen. And you're going to have to be able to shift when that happens. And that's what I'm telling people right now. Don't bet on the dispensary, dude. You know, you're going to have to figure out how to be a distributor if you're going to do that. Because that's really the only way you're going to kind of make up for, you know, the big change, especially once Texas goes. That's going to change a lot here in New Mexico. It's 50% of our sales, you know, so that's going to be a huge pivot for people. So I'm curious to see when that happens. And to be honest, I think that day might be a little bit sooner than we think. And with that being said, we're going to talk about Texas really quick for our last topic. But before we do you gentlemen have anything on the last topic?
No.
No.
And thank you for sharing on the inspection part. I was going to ask you that, but I was like, I don't want to assume. And, you know, if he wants to talk about it, he can. So thank you. You know, that's good that you talk about it. You had a really good perspective, because, you know, it's one thing to hear it from me about it, but when you hear someone that, you know, isn't as involved as I am, but, you know, you go in and do inspections and you hear the same thing. It's night and day. You know, it's like, there you go. You know, I'm not the only one saying it. So thank you for that. And this next one, you might have some things to say too on it too, and I'm sure. So the Texas Alcohol Beverage Commission, they created a emergency rule set. You know, yesterday all the advocates were down there and they're at the hearing for it. And this is pretty much just going off of what the governor wanted. He wanted to make sure that 21 and over is going to be the age limit for these hemp products, and no minors and kids are going to get it. And that's exactly what I've said this whole time. The industry wanted, this is what the advocates wanted, and this is what a lot of the legislature wanted. But, you know, it got hijacked by Senator Perry in Texas. I mean, I shouldn't know this dude's name. I'm not even from Texas, and that's not even my legislature, but I know this dude's name, you know, and he essentially was the one who sat there and argued with everybody that was against his bill and pretty much called everybody a terrible person and you're feeding people poison. You know, and it was a little ridiculous. And of course, you know, Lieutenant Dan, he joined in on that, and that didn't help either. The Lieutenant Governor, that didn't help either. And, you know, of course, he's going through it right now in Texas. You know, those people are kind of going after him. But anyway, so the rules they created, you know, 21 and over, and they're pretty much going off of federal guidelines. They're even going off of, you know, Delta 9 THC and THC itself. So decarboxylated and non-decarboxylated cannabis is what they're basing. Yeah, THCA. Excuse me. Yes, thank you. I've had a brain fart. THCA and regular THC. So one's decarbed and one's not, and they're taking account for both now because I guess they weren't before. And the federal government clarified that's what the case is in 2021. And so Texas is just essentially copy and paste what the federal government's doing. They just want to make sure that they're doing it right. These rules are only going to be from September 22nd. They were adopted on the 23rd and they take effect on October 3rd. And I think they're only good for 120 days. And so after that, I think what they're going to do is either once that's over or during that time period, I think they're going to start drafting their official rules, and then they'll have a rules hearing, and then they'll have their permanent rules for this product. Now, they even have where if you mess up and you don't follow these, that you'll get your license revoked. So they do have, you know, something set up to punish people who aren't following the law, because we know it's going to happen. You know, like we all know that, you know, we can set as many rules and laws as we want. People are just not going to follow them for whatever reason. You know that yourself, for what you do. So to me, I think this is a step in the right direction, especially for the veterans in Texas. And, you know, hopefully, you know, first responders in Texas are able to benefit from this too. I'm not too sure. I actually haven't spoken to many over there. I don't know if you know or not.
I think Austin actually has something for their firefighters over there. I don't know what it is. And I mean, and I don't know what, you know this better than I do. I'm probably sure, but they have a low THC level for their medical cannabis program. I don't know how low that is.
It's pretty much, I think they get 0.5% versus the 0.3%, or it's like
kind of like the Farm Bill loop, basically, sort of.
Actually, I think they just raised it to 3% or something like that. They just updated their medical. I mean, it's like super, super low. And to be honest, it's more of a hemp program than anything.
Right. Yeah. I know. In bringing that up, I've seen a lot of stuff, and I don't know if it was it earlier this year that I saw and I don't know names or anybody, but the press conference when they were like holding up gummies and like, oh, here, you take some of these gummies, and just a little ridiculousness. Yeah,
Lieutenant Dan.
Showmanship, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. Actually,
you're not going to take the whole bag.
So this dude, he's one of the guys, the advocates I know there. He goes by Hometown Hero. You guys can follow him on Instagram to see it. He actually made fun of that. He owns a cannabis company in Texas. So it showed that part and everything. And when he threw the bag, when they try to bring the box to show the stuff, it turned into him. He put in costume and kind of painted himself to make him look like the senator. And he said, "Oh, thank you, officer." He puts it down. And he said, "Yeah, it's crazy. We have this deal." And so he put all of his products on sale because it happened to be all of his products in that video. He said, "Here's the hometown discount, blah, blah, blah." I was like, oh my God, he turned it into marketing. That is so genius.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you got to love it, man.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. That was marketing for me.
We saw, and you spoke up on the Zoom meeting with, or the CCD, right? Is it CCD? Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, on the hemp, and I spoke to them as well and put some comments in there about, because they were trying to restrict that as well, and the language was not good for that. But in talking to Todd, I understand too, like everybody's worried about that the Farm Bill loop, right? And people have taken advantage of that and produced a lot of legal products. So there are people worried and trying to how do we fix that? But we have to do a better job. I I strongly disagree with blanket policies. They do not work. They punish good people for a few bad people. So I think punishment
never works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I learned that in the military. You know, like I was like, this doesn't work. All you're doing is pissing me off when I did nothing.
But that's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It looks like the advocates there did a really good job of doing that, because we were looking at a complete total ban. Yeah. And now you've got the regulatory stuff that's in there that they wanted in the first place.
Yeah. And that's all they wanted this whole time.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, it's like, we don't want to ban, we just want it regulated. And to be honest, like 60% of the state or something like that agreed. It's like, yeah, we just want regulation. We don't want you to ban any of this. What the hell?
Right.
Yeah.
And I get it. You know, if they would have banned it, that would have been great for New Mexico. You know, we would have made even more money, but at what cost? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, how many more of my veterans have to suffer, you know, just so we can make more money? And I get it. New Mexicans have suffered a lot, but some New Mexicans live in Texas. You know what I mean? And some of them serve too. So, you know, like they should get benefit as well. You know, like we're all Americans at the end of the day. Yeah. You know, and this shouldn't be the case in the first place, where we have this distinguishing between hemp, this cannabis thing, and then this possible Schedule 3 medical thing, and we have all this confusion and all this stuff going around. It should have just been this simple thing: cannabis. Some of it's hemp, some of it's cannabis, some of it's low THC, some of it's high THC.
Right.
You know, to take with whatever you need. And one day we're gonna have to get back to that.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the step that we take to get there. And to be honest, Texas is proving how you can really regulate this industry and have it thrive, and at the same time still have it fair. Because when I was in Austin, holy shit, that was crazy. I was like, man, I'm doing shit here that's illegal in New Mexico.
That's Austin for you, though.
Yeah, I was like, this is wild. You know, we're sitting at a bar with alcohol, sitting there smoking doobies, and I'm like, no one gives a shit. Like, no one cared. Like, we're on a rooftop thing. There was all kinds of people there, families. No one cared. No one said anything. No one brought up an issue. Everyone just minded their own business and ate their food.
It's not keep Austin weird. Austin is weird.
Well, I hope it stays that way. That was a good time. So,
well, like you mentioned, you know, there's that stigma of like with alcohol again. You know, people go to family functions, birthday parties, holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, all these things, and we go and there's all these family, there's all these kids, and everybody's drinking. Not, you know, everybody, but you know, there's a lot of drinking involved. But if someone has a little cannabis, oh, what are you doing? You can't do that. And here, like, there's kids around. It's like, wait a second, you know, like obviously you want to be careful. You don't want your kids having anything like that, but you're drinking in front of them.
Yeah,
it's okay, right?
What's the difference?
We have to get past that so bad.
Yeah, I know, and it's a little ridiculous. Like, my children are here, and I'm like, cool. I don't know what to tell you. It's like,
no, it's my children are here while you're holding that glass of bourbon or something else in your hand, or that beer in your hand.
Yeah.
You have to set a good example for the kids.
With the vape in their pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean,
meanwhile, like, you know, you always have the one relative or more that are like by the end of the night are stumbling around and saying stupid stuff right in front of the kids and everything else. So
yeah, that's why I had to stop drinking.
You were that uncle,
those nights for Gino.
I was that relative.
Gino was that Theo. Well, I hope we get away from that stigma one day. But I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all this stuff with me. I wish you nothing but luck, and to be honest, I might be right there next to you fighting on some of this stuff. So
I hope so.
Thank you for coming on the show. This is all I have for today on the updates and stuff. But I can't wait to get an update from you next year on the show when we come back and visit this, because we'll be closer to the psilocybin program getting set up. There'll be more rules and stuff and more stuff to talk about, and we'll have more data to go off of on how things are going with the fire department on the cannabis stuff. And then hopefully we can get more changes alongside that too and update people. Yeah. So a lot of fighting left. So welcome to the fight.
Well,
welcome to the Iron Dome.
It's crazy because honestly, back in the early 90s, I was doing grassroots stuff for Normal and Hip for Victory back in those days. I mean, and it's such a long time ago, and it's so crazy to where we've come now. It's pretty awesome, to be honest.
It is. And, welcome back to the fight then.
Yeah.
You know, like you're one of the old OGs and you don't even know it, man. And you're back in the fight. So no wonder why Val likes you so much. So, but anyway, shout out to Val. I'm sure she's watching.
Thanks for having me on, dude, and really letting me talk a little bit about this and bringing some more awareness to it. It helps. All this helps, and so it's really appreciated. Thank you.
No, thank you, and you know, keep doing what you do. You know, we appreciate firefighters more than you guys know, and sometimes we take y'all for granted. So I thank you guys, and you know, I hope you know you guys get the relief that you need, and I'm here when you need us, and I'm here for the fight. So that's all I have for this week. Thank you again, Gino. Thank you. And I'll be back next week for another episode of #Grassy Logic. We're dwindling down. Last couple episodes, probably I'm thinking probably the mid-October this year.
Mid-October?
Yeah, mid-October this year is probably the last episode.
So we can get to the tamales and the pumpkin pie?
Yeah, and it just gets really hectic towards the last couple of weeks of that. So it's a little easier just to cut it off. So we're probably, 3-4 episodes away from the season finale. So thank you all for watching. We'll be back another episode next week. And can't wait to see y'all again. All right, shoots. Whoa.